Good morning. It's Monday morning and it's beautiful outside. Thank God, because we've had nothing but heat and humidity here. 100% humidity yesterday morning. That was brutal. This is ASMM, Digital Small Business Connections. We are the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. We bring on entrepreneurs to help you see how you can do better in your business. Maybe learn from their hard lessons, maybe learn from just things they do, things that they've been able to find success with. So that's what we're hoping you get today. This is episode 60, which is amazing since we only started this in March, and we are streaming live. We're live on Facebook, live on Twitter, and live on YouTube. We'll also pull the audio from this and you'll get it by podcast. So if you can't see our beautiful faces today, that's all right. You're listening to us and you're gonna get just as everything that you were saying, you'll be able to understand. We're not gonna have any graphics up here you don't see. Want to remind you, since we are live, you can ask questions. And we have a guest today that I'm really excited about. So ask him questions. I mean, this is really, really cool to be able to say, hey, I've got Carlos Gill here today. I'm going to pick his brain and see about this question. So ask us questions. We can answer them live here. Just one more reminder, this episode is brought to you by ASMMcampus.com. If you cannot afford to hire an agency, we have created ASMMcampus.com so you can go over and take some classes and learn how to do social media for your small businesses. That's what we've created just for you guys. So our guest today is Carlos Gill. He wrote The End of Marketing, and he is also the creator of Outlaw masks. I have one. I didn't wear it today. My son actually has it because he loves it, even though it's pink. So we're going to talk to Carlos. Let me bring him in. Hey, Carlos, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Ann?
I'm good. I'm so excited about this because I've only seen you on stage.
Well, I'm excited about this too. This is the new stage.
It really is the new stage. So, but this time I actually get to talk to you. So that's quite nice. So,
yeah, absolutely. Likewise.
Yeah. So we're going to do something different today. I wanted to talk about, a lot of times I'll say to people, you need a personal brand. And they'll say, oh, well, I don't have one. And I'll say, you really do. You just aren't paying attention to it. And if you're not paying attention to it, you could have a brand out there that you really aren't trying to develop, something that is really not good for you. But you've created a brand for yourself that you stick to pretty carefully. So this morning I went through your tweets. I went through your last 5 tweets, and I know. So hopefully, so we're going to talk about those and just let you expand on because you only have, what do we have? 240 characters now, right? So you have those characters and you say something, but you don't get to expand on it enough. So I want to talk about this one first. You talked about your spontaneous tweets, the things that you say that you don't put a lot of thought into. You put them out there and they get the most engagement. So expand on that a little bit. Why do you think that is?
So first of all, I'm so glad that you brought up the whole notion of personal branding, because everyone has a brand and it's the brand of you. Now, I think where a lot of folks get caught up when they talk about personal branding is, first of all, they think way too deep in terms of, on day one, what do I want people to see me as 10 years from now? And your personal and professional brand are really one in the same. I think that the way that your brand is perceived by others is going to really change based on medium to medium, because as you know, and those watching, not every social network is the same. So for example, on LinkedIn, you're going to post about blogs and thought leadership and topics related to your career, your industry. Whereas, Instagram is much more personal, and Twitter can kind of be a combination of both, and Facebook, again, personal, but yet professional based on the circles that you roll in. So I've been in this space for 12 years now, and my brand has evolved over the years, and much of my brand has evolved really throughout with my career, starting off as an entrepreneur in my 20s, then going to work in corporate America, and then kind of coming full circle. And now in almost my 40s, I'm in my late 30s, but almost in my 40s, being an author and speaker and, more of a seasoned entrepreneur, if you will. But what I will say about branding in general is that you need to be consistently known for something. So that's a very long way of saying, if you're passionate about marketing, talk about marketing, engage with other marketers, teach other people who aren't necessarily marketers about marketing. If you're a YouTuber, same principles apply. Kind of put yourself in that arena or that box, if you will. And if you do that really well and you're successful, then speaking opportunities will come, consulting opportunities will come, paid opportunities that are going to help grow your business will come. So bringing that all together to spontaneous tweets. Again, I'm a marketer. My personal brand is really known as someone that teaches you about social media marketing. For the most part, if you look at my content, I'd say about 90-95% of it, it's work related, right? It's the Carlos Gil brand. There's very little elements in my personal life, when it comes to wife and kids that are, no pun intended, married into my content. Again, that's by design. So when I sit down and I think about, all right, I'm going to post something and I imagine this post is just going to fly off the rails with engagement, it falls flat on its face. And I think the reason for that is because I'm just thinking too much like a marketer. And to kind of take a page out of my own book, people today, they want to be engaged, they don't want to be sold to. So when you remove the marketing and the sales elements out of content and you're just a real person, people relate to realness. People today are engaged by what's real and relatable. We're going through COVID-19 right now. A lot of people have lost work. I've lost business. They've lost their jobs, et cetera, aren't good. And people historically have been afraid to open up to their vulnerabilities. They kind of want to have this facade that everything's great, business is great, you got all these speaking engagements, things are phenomenal. I know I've fallen into that trap before. And when you look at where we're at today, more people can relate to the guy or the girl that's either lost a job in recent times or has a relative that's sick or feels a certain type of way about societal issue that's happening. So when I post something without very little thought, it typically performs the best. And there's times where I'll be sitting here on the couch and something will come to mind and I'll tweet it out. And that's really what Twitter for the most part is for me, is an outlet of my thoughts. And for anyone out there that is thinking, oh, I really want to build my brand, but I don't know what to say, just say what's on your mind. You don't need to have thousands of followers. You don't need to be verified on any of these platforms in order for people to take notice of what you have to say. You just need to get out there and say it. And I think so many folks get stuck in this vacuum, if you will. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Ann, but I think what happens, and I had to say I think because again, I'm not really the consumer. I'm more of on the creative side. But when I take a step back and I put myself in the shoes of people who follow me, they also follow my colleagues, right? And when you're kind of, at the ground level, if you will, and you're kind of trying to work your way up the top in this space, it's easy to look at 20, 30, 50 influencers that you like to follow, and you become discouraged because you see that for the most part, all these people are verified. They have thousands of followers. They're getting such high engagement with regards to, where you stand. And, I was once there and heck, I'm still there, right? There's days where I tweet certain things out that I think is good content and people don't pay attention to it. And what I've come to learn in the space is that timing has so much to do with it, right? It's just, it's timing. There's times where I'll repurpose a tweet from 3 months ago that got 1 or 2 likes and I'll tweet it at a different time, or I'll just give it a different shot or maybe rearrange some of the words, and then boom, all of a sudden it resonates with people differently. And that's the thing about the space that we're in, is consistency has so much to do with it. Hanging in there, not getting the engagement today that you're hoping for, networking with other people also. I could go on and make this an entire podcast about like all the do's and don'ts of social media marketing. But again, going back to spontaneous tweets, and what my tweet meant by that is just don't overthink what you have to say. Instead, just say it.
Right. Well, being real, right? If you're real, it's one of the posts I used to. I don't know if you know this. Before I owned my agency, I had a blog that was pretty popular. It was Ann's Running Commentary, all about running. And one of my most popular blog posts was in response to a coach who said, I can't remember where he coached, or I think it was a woman. She coached, and she said, "People who run over 4 hours don't deserve to get the medal." At the end of a marathon, right? People that take over 4 hours to finish a marathon. And I was furious because even though I was a 4-hour marathoner, I was a really close to 4-hour marathoner as opposed to a 5 or 6 hour marathoner. But I know that the difference between my 4:45 marathon and my 4:07 marathon was that the 4:07 was easier. Because I was in better shape, I was running faster, and I didn't have to be out there for 4 hours and 45 minutes. And I posted about this and said, come on, these people are working their butts off, but they're out there for 6 hours. That is
Mm-hmm.
hard. And it was just me saying kind of what was on my mind. It went nuts. It was all over the internet. Everybody was reading it. I got a response from this coach. It was crazy, but it was because I cared. So having something you put out there that you care about, or that, has made you angry or made you feel
Mm-hmm.
something, makes you more human. So I absolutely agree with that.
It goes back to what I said before. It makes you real and relatable to others. And in these times where we're in right now, people, the least thing that they want to see in their news feed is an advertisement from another company trying to sell them something. Instead,
Right.
they're turning to social media because, social media is an outlet. It's a creative outlet. In some cases, it's a news, well, not some cases, it is a news outlet. But what I was going to say is in some cases, it's even an escape from reality. And I write about this in my book, The Marketing, and I talk about it quite a bit in my keynotes now. Like, we live in two parallel universes. We live in the online world, but we also live in the real world, and they're not one and the same. I've had this debate with people countless times over the last couple of years, especially. Like, the internet and real life are not the same thing.
No.
Like, you have to understand, I walk out this door right now, very few people know who the heck I am in my own neighborhood. Right. But I just go into the neighborhood of Twitter. Right. And it's not hard for people to know who I am because they already follow me. Right.
Right.
Who we are online isn't always a mirror reflection of who we are in real life. That's just a reality of how this space has unfolded. Like, we curate online who we want ourselves to be and how we want others to view us. And I think, again, in these times, the more real you can be, the more relatable, the more humble, the more so that people are going to want to engage with you, and in some cases even lend a helping hand. And I know that we're going to talk about my new business venture here in a moment, but I've even learned in the last couple months just having to open up and show people like, hey, my business took a hit because of COVID, and
absolutely,
I had to pivot in another direction. Right? Does it mean all of a sudden that now I'm a failure as a speaker or an agency owner, as a digital marketer? No, absolutely not. It just means that a light bulb went off. It's time to do something else until that part of the world is restored back to normal again.
Right. Absolutely. So your next tweet actually goes right on the tail of this one, right? Spontaneous tweet. Last night you tweeted about, and I have to tell you, I couldn't find what you were talking about, but I'm not a big ESPN watcher. You were talking about snarky humor, like Moon Pie or Wendy's, right? They have snarky humor in their tweets, but ESPN, there's a difference between snarky humor and poor choices. So tell us a little bit about what the poor choice was and why you thought it was a good idea to talk about this last night. Because I think it is a good idea to talk about it.
Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'm friends with Ja Rule, the rapper and hip hop artist. And, there are some people that, they love Ja Rule because of his contributions to the music industry. I'm almost 37. I'll be 37 next month. So Ja was really big, as an artist when I was coming up in high school. And I think to other folks in my generation, the same. But obviously the whole Fyre Fest thing happened and people have formed their own opinions because of Ja. And since then, there's been a lot of memes, on social media and whatnot. But, unlike other people, I've actually gotten to know Ja Rule for who he is. To me, he's Jeff. He's my friend Jeff, the artist Ja Rule. So being that I've gotten to know him more on a human level, when I see people kind of poke fun at him on the internet, it's just like any other friend that you're going to come defend, right? And it's not clout chasing or anything like that. It's just kind of standing up for a friend. So, I look at my Twitter yesterday and see that Ja is trending, and I call him up and meet him like, dude, like what the hell happened now? And he's like, oh man, ESPN, they posted out a video of me making fun of me because he performed at a Milwaukee Bucks basketball game a couple years ago. And there were some technical issues, and it kind of became like one of those like cheeky haha moments on social media when it happened. But we're talking about 2 years ago now. And granted, sports are back. You've got the NBA that's getting ready to resume. They're doing exhibition games. You have pro baseball, MLB. They just had their first weekend. So Ja was a little irritated that, I wouldn't say a little, he was really irritated that ESPN would use their platform basically to troll him out of context. I was like, yeah, that's kind of awkward. And that led to my tweet. Basically, if you're a brand, if you're a media outlet, first and foremost, traditional media, mainstream media, you really shouldn't be using your platform to troll, make fun of others. You really shouldn't. But it feels like this is what has become of the media in 2020. Everything that the media does, and you know what, social media, personal brands, going back, kind of coming full circle, it's no different. You know, we're all using our platforms to do what? To get attention, to get eyeballs, to get people to chime in, whether it's a ha ha ha, you know, poke fun at someone, say something real savage to kind of rile people up. You know I've been doing it recently, talking, you know, about mass culture, and you know, I know that people are gonna feel one type of way and they're gonna feel another type of way. You know, we do this naturally as marketers, and who works behind the controls of a social media account? It's a marketer, right? It's a person. So my statement was, you know, around, first of all, and I encourage incorporating personality and humor. I'm a big fan of Wendy's. You know, I wrote about them in my book, London Marketing. I talk about them all the time in my keynotes. Big fan of it. So I get that snarkiness and humor is a part of internet culture these days. But where I feel ESPN made a poor choice is, instead of covering sports and covering the news, you look borderline desperate for engagement when you've got to troll a celebrity.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And you said it so well. When you have to troll a celebrity, we see it even on small levels where somebody will tweet at or use somebody's name because they're like, oh, well, they have 30,000 followers or 100,000 followers. Let's use them, and then people are going to see us more. And it's not a great way to do it. And whereas, you know, we'll go take this into collaboration, right? You want to use collaboration. That's great. I mean, that's what we're doing here, right? My followers get to see you. You get your followers get to see me. It just is a nice way to have this happen. But to do it in the way that they did it, you're right. It's just not the right way. It really isn't. So, all right. So I want to talk about something, and this was not really part of your last 5 tweets, but it was a part of a lot of your tweets recently. And I think it's important to talk about. So, standing up for your beliefs. When Black Lives Matter, when all of this broke in, what was it, June? When this broke and the world went crazy, you talked about it. So tell me what made you say, you know what, I'm tired of being silent.
Man, it's such a loaded question, Anne. But it's a good one. It's valid, because privately, I've had folks reach out to me and say, like, you know what, dude, like, I like this side of Carlos. You know, you're talking less about marketing. You're talking about more about things that matter. And it wasn't just, you know, no pun intended, Black Lives Matter that made me start going in a different direction with my brand. It was really when COVID happened back in March. You know, marketing is marketing. Right? It's social media is social media, but these are also topics that should take a back seat to more important topics and societal issues. And, you know, to go a little bit deeper, you know, down this rabbit hole, if you will, if you have a platform of any kind, you should use your platform to speak up for what you believe in. And I know it's tricky, because when people get to know you as an author or a speaker or whatever, you know, it's hard to kind of break out of that box, but it's because we've been put into that box. And oftentimes we put ourselves in a certain sandbox. You know, if I look at the folks I'm connected to on Facebook, for the most part, these are people that are in our industry, the social media marketing industry. You know, the people that follow me on Twitter are other social media marketers, right? So when we just surround ourselves with people like us, so to speak, on a professional level, we are putting ourselves in a category or a box, and it's very hard to kind of break out of that. And, you know, as I started seeing business kind of start disappearing and going away, and I started obviously seeing the rising tensions, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement, it was almost like a trigger went off inside of me. And I started thinking to myself, man, I've got a platform with people that follow me. I have people from all different walks of life that follow me. And let's face it, I'm a Hispanic male. And why wouldn't I use my platform to speak about issues that are also important to me? And they need to be brought to light. And if I lose business as a result of it, then I lose business as a result of it. Right. You know, if people want to unfollow me, unfriend me, then I lose people who really weren't my friends or my followers. But conveniently in the moment, I provided some sort of value to them that now I don't. And that's just how the world works, Anne.
Right.
And I think that in these times, people will judge you more for what you don't say than for what you do say. And believe you me, I've sat back and I've seen, let's just say leaders in our space that appear very tone deaf these days because
Right.
they're kind of talking about, what they're watching on Netflix, and life is just kind of moving on as usual and
Right.
not really addressing the elephant in the room. And again, how people use their own platform is how they use their own platform.
Right.
But I think in these times when you really talk about leadership is less about what you do for a living, and it's more about the people that you really support and you care about. And
Right.
I as a minority, if you will, in this space that I've been in for the last 10, 12 years, both on the corporate side, both on the speaking side, let's just face it, there's not a lot of people that look like me. So I might not be Black or African American, but I'm Hispanic. And I've faced my own shares over the years of having to kind of break through those cultural differences and whatnot. It's kind of sad where we're at in society today. So to kind of put a bow on this and go back to my earlier statement, if you have a platform, you absolutely should use it to speak out for what you do believe in.
Right. So I'm going to try to tell the story very quickly. And I actually maybe should do a whole show on just this part because I think it's that important. In 2012, I ran Ironman. I've talked about that a few times on the show. I was kind of a kick-ass little chick back then. And I finished it way faster than I ever thought. I had all these great things happening. And that was October 2012. On July 19th, 2013, I called an emergency psychiatry appointment. And I said, I am either going to jump off the bridge today or I need help. And they said, well, come get help. A few days later, I wrote a blog post called Psych Ward Annie. And my husband was furious. He was absolutely furious. He was like, I can't believe you did this. And I said, well, here's the thing, Blaze. Everybody's calling me Iron Ann. All the people on Twitter who have been following me, she's Iron Ann. She's so cool. She's so strong. And here I am on a psych ward because my life had become so difficult and I didn't see any way out. And if I don't do this, then I'm not standing up for what I know is true. And Carlos, I was so lucky because I had this moment where as we're arguing, I get a text on my phone. It was a message from my blog and it was a 15-year-old boy. He said, I was going to kill myself today.
Wow.
But I read your blog and I called my mom and she's going to get me help.
Wow.
And that's the thing about standing up for what you know is true, right? So being yourself online and being truly being who you are, it's so important, and it's difficult. You think even now when I say Psych Ward Annie, I'm like, oh God, I hope people don't think that, they don't want to use me for whatever reason. Right. But it's so important because I did. I mean, that one boy. And now since then, we've done a lot more to try to help people understand that you're not alone in this, but you need to stand up for your beliefs. It's such an important part of it.
100%. And I know we're talking about recent tweets. I don't know if you had this queued up, but I tweeted it last night. If you're going through some hard times right now, don't be bashful or embarrassed or ashamed to let your social network know about it. Don't hold things in because again, the power of social media is such that you look at a platform like Twitter, where if you tweet certain keywords, right, those keywords get picked up by Twitter's search engine. And you never know who's out there watching from afar. Just because someone doesn't like your content or follow you doesn't mean that they're not paying attention.
Absolutely. And I think that's true what you're saying. So you can take this two ways. One, with your mental health. Clearly, if you're struggling, say it, because what you'll find is when I said that, when I put that out there, the number of responses I got from people who said, oh my God, I struggle too. And I really thought I was alone in this. It's amazing. Every time I speak on the subject, every time I go out and publicly speak on the subject, the number of people who come up with me to say, hey, I've been really struggling. How do I get help? It's really empowering to know you can help somebody. So, that's part of it. The other part is that business-wise right now, businesses are out there and they're struggling. And instead of trying to act like they're not, if they say, hey, we're struggling, they're much more likely to get help. They're much more likely for their people. We watched a local bar. They were going to have to close their doors. They said, we're going to have to close our doors. And the neighborhood they were in saved the bar. Literally said, let us donate. let us give you money to help save this farm. That's really cool because they said, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
So it's part of it. So, all right, we haven't spent any time on your book. I do want to talk about your book because it was a wonderful book and it is so important in what we're doing right now. So tell me a little bit about why you wrote it and why you say it's the end of marketing.
So why I wrote it, first of all, after working in this space for as many years as I've worked, and I've had an opportunity to work at different brands, on the inside, and then also as an entrepreneur on the outside, but yet work directly with brands, I realized that there's such a disconnect between what traditionally brand marketers have been taught about social media and realistically what's really happening in the world of social today. Today, people are brands, and YouTubers, you look at podcasters, you look at folks like you and I that we have a following because we are brands. And in some cases, when you look at, the celebrities that are on social media, you look at the big name influencers, they have more reach and more influence than big brands. I use Casey Neistat as an example in my book because you look at Casey's numbers just on the surface and he's getting more engagement than the Starbucks and Coca-Colas and Walmarts of the world. And there's validity in that. And what influencers have taught us all how to do over the last decade is how to build a community and build a following by just being a real person, by giving people an inner glimpse of what you are doing in your day-to-day, by bringing people behind the scenes. We talked before about snarkiness, about humor, by having personality. So the premise of the book is that in order to grow your business over the next decade in this era of social media and also AI, you need to put a human face and voice behind your brand instead of just a logo. Logos these days, they don't sell. People don't want to engage with the logos. They want to engage with the people. So the book is a 12-chapter kind of step-by-step formula to activate your employees and your advocates and your customers to really be the new faces of your brand. So 5 years from now, when you follow, for example, Walmart on social media, Walmart should be an army of people that you go to and that you relate to based on demographic. Like, I'm Hispanic. Home Depot should probably have a Hispanic male teaching me how to build things, right? Teaching me how to grill, based on relatability, what we've talked about here today. And the reason for the title, The End of Marketing, is because, as I say in the very first sentence of the book, marketing as we know it is dead. What is marketing today? When you really stop and think about it, it's not one thing. It's not just advertising. It's not radio ads. It's not social media. It's sales. It's communications. It's PR. It's crisis communications in some cases. It's advocacy. Marketing has so many different meanings today, but what has been lost by marketers over this last decade as social media has really risen in popularity is relationships. And relationships aren't new by any means. Relationships have always been the fundamental basis in terms of why people do business with one another. And historically, and even still today, you do business with who you want to do business with. And business relationships oftentimes are formed and predicated based on who you like and who you trust, not necessarily who has the best service or best product or the most affordable product or service. So the book is definitely an easy read. That's the feedback that I've heard from countless people. I wrote the book cover to cover. So if you ever watch one of my keynotes, or any of my videos that I've posted on social media or on YouTube, you'll see that, I really pride myself in making my teaching engaging and entertaining, but yet informative, and really making it easy for folks to learn. I kind of break things down one by one. So, when you read each chapter, I'm kind of bringing you through a journey. There's stories involved throughout the book, but then there's also like deep down how to. And when you really think about it from a marketing standpoint, the way I wrote my book is the way that most marketers should be approaching their businesses and the relationships that they build. You take your community, or you take anyone's paying attention through this journey, all right? And then you get them to the point where you either teach them how to use your products more, which is going to force them to buy, or you just flat out come out and listen to who's paying attention, or to who's speaking about your brand, and then you make them the advocates for your business.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing. Actually, the first time I saw you was in Philadelphia at the Digital Summit a couple of years ago. That's the first time I sat in the audience. And that's exactly what you do. You do it in a way that is more step by step. Whereas so many people want to talk at you. You give people like something valuable they can walk away with, they can put to work in their business. And that's what I loved about the book. I thought it was great. But I love what you said about relationships, because as a small business, we have an advantage over Walmart. We have an advantage over Coca-Cola. We are people.
100%.
I am a person. I can be out there, and you as a small, you know, whether you own a plumbing company or you're an attorney or whatever you are, you're a person and you're relatable, and you can get that point across, and especially in digital marketing. So I think I loved the book. I thought it was great.
Yeah. And that's the thing that big brand, I think they lose kind of two thoughts on that. I think they lose sight of the fact that, you know, one, if you want to be a master marketer on these channels, you need to pay attention to what's happening outside of your brand, right? What I noticed in my years of working in corporate marketing was that in the marketing department, specifically where I worked at 4 different companies, I was like the only person that had a personal brand on social media. I was the only person that at the end of the day was clocking out my job and then jumping on a Twitter chat. I was understanding how the culture of social media works. Now, I know there's been this heated contested debate for a while now. Does someone that work in corporate marketing, specifically social media marketing, need to have a personal brand? And I say the answer to that is no. They don't need to have a personal brand, but what they do need to do is be connected how these mediums work outside of your own channels.
Right.
You need to know what's happening. Like, a lot of folks in our space got to know me through Snapchat. And the reason why they got to know me through Snapchat is because I was working at Winn-Dixie at the time in Jacksonville, Florida, as their head of social. And Snapchat was relatively new around 2013. And I jumped on just for pure research and development standpoint. You know, it was just more or less, I'm going to jump on here. I'm going to learn how this works and see if it makes sense for our brand. And then I, as a creative or as a professional, really built an affinity for the platform. And I started talking about it for about 2 or 3 years. And that's how other marketers got to know who I was in the process. So again, as a marketer today, your job is to present your company in the best light and build as many relationships as possible, which ultimately those relationships are going to drive to the bottom line. It's not linear. You can't just run a couple Facebook ads. You can't just do a couple posts. It doesn't matter how big your brand is. The competitive advantage that you, me, and any other independent has is that we can move quicker. We don't have a board of directors. We don't have several layers of management that's like, this tweet doesn't really feel all that right, or this feels off brand. We can just sprint, whereas others are learning how to crawl and then walk and then run.
Well, a great example with this podcast, right? Think about this podcast. I started it in March with the idea of getting 10 of my clients in front of people. Like they're the only 10 who I was really worried about. I'm like, I have got to find a way to get them in front of people. Let's use my market. And we were able to pivot like that, immediately start this podcast. And now we're on 60 episodes and it's just July. So that is pretty quick. That is a really good point. I like that you said that.
It's a great testament to you, right? So you've done 60 episodes. So that shows consistency over a period of several months. I would presume that besides streaming on Facebook, you had mentioned before audio, are you on Spotify and iTunes?
We are, yeah. We're everywhere you can.
Yes. So think about Spotify and iTunes, right? They are both global entities that have people from all over the world that are downloading their content. So imagine if Home Depot did the Builders podcast. Imagine if Walmart did, the Money Savers podcast. Imagine if these big brands were to now dip their toe in the water in these spaces where historically you're seeing people creating content, now not businesses creating content. Right? Think about how much greater their reach would be. But here's like the key to that. The reason why these brands don't dip their toe into the water and play in these sandboxes is because you need a person. You need a person to host the podcast. You need a person to create the podcast and be the face. And brands are constantly worried. One, big brands, I know I'm digressing here, but big brands are constantly thinking about the here and the, and they're just wanting to promote their latest sale to make as much money as possible, to make their books look good for this month. But the flip side to that is they also are hesitant to invest in human capital. Because I know I faced this when I was working at Winn-Dixie. When I was working at Winn-Dixie, I was there for 2 years. Before we had any corporate social handles, I went off and created at Winn-Dixie Carlos on Twitter. You can still see it today. And I created at Winn-Dixie Carlos on Facebook. And I use these mediums to connect with other bloggers and influencers in the grocery space and the shopping and deal space. And right away, I got pushback from my head of corporate communications at the time, because his whole fear statement to me was, if we go off and start building armies of people, well, what happens when we have to fire them? What happens when they leave? What happens when they go somewhere else? And that notion really hasn't changed since then, which is why, again, you don't really see brands jumping in this space that we're doing, because what happens if today I'm working for X brand and tomorrow I'm not?
Right, right. No, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it, but yes. And some of them do, you know, if you look at somebody like Southwest, right? Southwest does that a little bit better because they bring their employees into the mix. And I think it is something that you do see more often. I want to go, because we're going to run out of time, and I don't want to forget Outlaw masks. You had to make, I mean, think about, for those of you listening, those of you watching, Carlos was making a living primarily public speaking. And he was, you know, pardon my language, but he was kicking ass at it. He was doing a great job. He was all over the place. And then COVID happened. And now speaking opportunities, yes, you've got some virtual ones. They're not paying nearly as much, and they're not, some of them aren't even happening. So you made a complete pivot. Tell us what you did.
Well, first of all, you know, as you're saying that selfishly, I'm looking here on Amazon, because this year was supposed to be my world tour, going around to multiple countries. My publisher, Kogan Page, is based in the UK. So they have a very big presence with, you know, with the bookstores, you know, throughout the UK, Asia as well. So this is going to be kind of like the Carlos Gil world tour, if you know, if I might just say. And ironically, in spite of COVID and not physically going in places, my book right now, The End of Marketing, is number 8 on Amazon amongst bestsellers for marketing books, which is fantastic. And I think the reason for that is because the times that we're in right now, the book has so much relevancy. Just, you know, humanizing your brand, how to stay afloat, how to stay in business in these times, you know. And granted, I didn't know that COVID was going to happen when I wrote this book a year ago.
Right.
But I did write this book with very much almost like a doomsday-like feel to it. So there is kind of like that dark wording throughout it, you know, where, you know, AI is going to disrupt your business and you might lose your job and you might not have people follow you. Here are the things that you have to do. So kind of swap out AI for COVID and boom, you have, you know, then the marketing now. But going back to the pivot. So there was one week in March, beginning of March, I'd just come back from social media marketing world, and South by Southwest gets canceled. Along with South by Southwest was like 3 paid opportunities associated with South by Southwest. Then X conference cancels and this conference cancels. And then the halo effect was brands that my agency was working with, they start sending out their emails, you know, hey, due to, you know, change in business, you know, we're pausing all of our vendor contracts. In some cases, you know, we're going to be using our 30-day out clause. So there was one week in March that was just really, really just grim. It was probably one of the worst weeks of my career I can remember. But I also have this mindset, and that unless you have a check sitting in your bank account that has cleared, money that you have invoiced to make is not yours. It's not yours, and you don't own it until you've actually been paid. So you can't lose something that was never yours to start with. Now, if you give me, let's say $100,000 in business and sitting in my bank account, and now I've spent some of it and I need to give you that money back because you want it back, that's a different story. But money that you have not been paid is not yours to lose if you have not received it yet. And I started thinking this way back in 2008 when I kind of went through my trials and tribulations throughout the last recession. And the last recession, even though I was much younger, really prepared me for where we're at today. When things go south, you need to find a way to go north very fast. And, you know, the rise of Outlaw masks is interesting because my brother-in-law, he also kind of was faced in a very similar situation, if you will, with having to pivot. He comes from the car industry. Right around this time where I'm losing all this business, we got our families and we decided to retreat to the mountains of North Carolina. And we all moved into a compound. We moved into a house together. It was like our version of the NBA bubble. And, you know, he's not going to work now, not selling cars, so he's not getting paid. I'm not speaking. I'm seeing business, you know, dwindle down, so I'm not getting paid. And we both start thinking, man, like, what are we going to do? And we used to have these just every night we get together on like the balcony of our house in the mountains, and we just have these talks. We would call it like stick talk, because we get like this walking stick, and we would just start kind of throwing different ideas out there, see like what can we do. And in that, Reggie, his name's Reggie, he went and he had bought at Walmart this not bandana face mask, but it was one of those like face masks that kind of like you can put it here and you can put it like above to your
like
nose. What's that?
A buff.
If that's what it's called, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And then I said, I'm like, dude, like I like this because it can be a mask. You can turn it into like a wristband. You can put it, you know, all over your head. And, you know, Reggie's from LA. I'm from Miami. We're both fans of hip hop culture. So we started thinking like, man, where can we really take this? Like masks aren't going away at all. It was very, very early, you know, days of COVID. And, you know, we just came up with this idea. Let's take the classic bandana print and let's turn that into like a pretty cool looking face mask. And, you know, the challenge of starting up a business in these days, I will say, is when you start throwing names at the wall and you go immediately over to GoDaddy, there's a lot of good names have been taken. But we start thinking like, what do we want our business to represent? What do we want our business really to be? And you associate, you know, bandana culture with rebels. So that's where Outlaw Masks was born. And it was a very kind of quick turnaround, if you will. Within 30 days, we had a logo, we procured products, we designed our products. We got a warehouse in Miami. We got everything set up through Shopify, and May 20th, our first email went out. And this is, again, kind of bringing this full circle where personal branding comes in. We've both been leveraging, both Reggie and I have been leveraging our social networks, our personal networks, email networks. Our first 60 days in business has really been predicated based on relationships that we've built for the last decade plus. And we've got a really, you know, nice looking product. You know, once you're in business for 60 days, you start seeing data, you start getting metrics, you start seeing what's moving. You can start kind of playing around with your pricing tiers a little bit. And, you know, we're really excited. If you would have asked me 90 days ago, back in March, what I would have been doing come July, I would have told you I honestly have no idea. And that's where this is a very humbling, you know, experience for me personally, because this business, Outlaw Masks, is where I'm spending the majority, if not all of my time these days. And that in itself has become really therapeutic because it gives me something to be working on versus, you know, playing PlayStation or thinking about, man, like how much life sucks right now. And the reality is that we have a product that it looks good, it's comfortable, and provides value for others in a time of crisis.
I'm going to pull up this question because I think you answered it. For someone ready to pivot today, what is your most focused key point to being more human? And I think what you just said, leveraging your people is so, it's really where to start, right? Leveraging the people, you know, I've tweeted about you. I know a lot of people in the social media marketing world have all tweeted about your Outlaw Masks because we're
good
like,
or bad. I want to add good or bad about it, because we've got a few that haven't had such nice things to say.
Well, mine's really pretty, I'm just saying, and I do look really like an outlaw, a 50-year-old female outlaw. I'm badass.
And I want to add something to that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ann. I want to add something because Reggie and I, we have great mentors and supporters behind the scenes. You know, one of ours, you know, she goes on the internet by Beauty Bubble, Rachel. She gave us some really good insight early on because we created this whole like Wild Wild West cowboy brand. And I believe, you know, and again, I write about this in my book, I believe that people today buy more into a brand than they do a product. And it's important, it was important back then, it still is to me and to my brother-in-law, that this brand of Outlaw Masks is not the Carlos Gil brand of e-commerce.
Oh yeah.
I'm an owner in it, but when you go to the website, you know, you're not seeing my photo on there, you're not seeing my accolades, you're not seeing my brother-in-law. You know, my brother-in-law is a former professional baseball in the Minnesota Twins organization, right? You're not seeing our story But what we really wanted to do, and what we're striving to do, is to really put a new spin on what it means to be an outlaw. And for us, it's all inclusive. You know, we are minority owners. He's Black, I'm Hispanic. If you look at the people that are buying our masks and we're promoting them all over social media, it's males, it's females, you know, it's white, it's Black, right? It's Hispanic. Like, you know, we have such a diverse customer base in our first 60 days that it's really aligning with what we have been striving to do from the beginning. Is an outlaw is not criminal or a rebel. It's actually someone that cares about their community. That's why they're wearing a mask. And it's diversity. Like, we researched the history of the bandana print, and bandana print historically has been associated with like gang culture. And I was really surprised when I read that like the actual bandana print and bandanas have been worn by the LGBTQ community. It's been worn by, generations before us, different diverse groups. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no. I absolutely think it's really great what you've done. First of all, I love the print. I have always loved bandanas, and partially I think because of cowboys, right? I think cowboys are the coolest thing that ever existed, and so they always had bandanas. So I love it. I love what you're doing. I think it's good, and I don't think masks. Even though I don't think we'll wear masks forever, I think there will be a lot more mask wearing. I know, I just took a 30-hour trip to New Zealand in December. If I did that again, I'd wear a mask, whether we're in the middle of COVID or not. I know that I'm surrounding myself with a lot of people, and I feel more comfortable knowing that, okay, I can protect myself and not the other people, right?
Right. And for us, again, being into hip hop culture, our mindset was we're going to create a brand that's also associated as being a fashion brand, because let's face it, people are always going to take pride in the sneakers that they wear, the clothes that they wear, and the mask ultimately becomes a fashion statement, becomes a fashion accessory. When I'm out and about, I was out with my wife and, with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law over the weekend, and, we're going to a nice restaurant, and we see that people are dressed nice, but they're wearing the paper disposable mask. That in itself, like, completely kills one's outfit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So we're building outlaw masks to also be seen as a fashion statement. Now, there was such a good question before on the screen. I don't know if you could bring it up, about like putting humanity into a pivot. Here's what I'll say about pivoting in general. First of all, pivoting requires eating a little humble pie and kind of swallowing that pride and letting go of it. Because I'll give you an example, not to go too far. Like, my dad, in the last couple months since I started Outlaw Mask, every time I talk to him, he keeps like saying like, "Oh, son, I'm so sorry that, you're not doing what you love. You're not out there on stage. It's going to come back again." And I tell him, "Dad, I'm still doing what I love. I'm able to reach people every single day through social media. I'm able to do podcasts and video interviews like this and reach people. The new stage of today is the internet. Whereas before, I had to get on an airplane, spend 3 days away from my family, eat bad food, hang out with people that aren't my family, right? And speak for 30 minutes and then get off stage, right? Like, that in itself, even though it was great in the moment while it was helping me build my brand and grow as a professional, is also very time consuming and very exhausting. Now I'm able to take everything that I've learned in marketing, and I've already got a book that's a bestseller. And thanks to my community, thanks to people like yourself, Anne, have been supporters of that book and bought it. But now I'm able to kind of take the same formula. This is what I tell my brother-in-law when we're on conversations, like, dude, like, the playbook for Outlaw Masks is the same playbook as then the marketing. And the next business I launch, it'll be the same playbook. You've built a community, you tell your followers about it, you live the brand, you embody the brand, the people that support you and show love, you get them to become customers, and then you get them to advocate for you. And then you keep doing that over and over again. And that, absolutely, to bring this full circle, is exactly what I did when writing the book, Teaching Marketers. Now, Whitney, going back to Whitney here today, you have to be willing to let others know that you've lost something in order to gain something back. That's just the way this works. I have had to write and document now content on social media telling people I've lost business because of COVID. Right. I know I'm not the only person that has, but I tell you what, a lot of my colleagues aren't being as transparent with their communities as they probably should be, right? And this is what I said before, you have to eat a slice of humble pie, and you need to let go of that pride, because it takes some guts to tell people in your community that you are not earning the income that you once were.
Right.
But guess what? You're not alone. And that's where making yourself real and relatable to others is more of a strength than it is a weakness.
Absolutely. Hey, Carlos, we're running out of time. I'm going to pull somebody up, and I'm just going to ask. So it's Rapper R from over in on Twitter. I would love you to, after we're done here, go to Twitter and answer her question there, if you could, because we don't have time to do it here. I need to go back. I want to ask you because I have to. I know one of your favorite books, we're going to put that out there as the end of marketing because you wrote it. But if you had to pick another favorite book, tell me what it is.
I would say Strength Finders. Strength Finders has been a book that's made an impact. It's a very easy read. Strength Finders 2.0 comes with an assessment for you to do, so you'll learn a lot about yourself. You know, I'm a fan of quick, easy reads. So Strength Finders 2.0, more of a coffee table book. You know, anything Gary Vee, you know, you won't be disappointed. But, you know, I'd say if you're like me and you're looking for something that's an easy read on the go, then definitely Strength Finders.
Awesome. That's perfect. All right. I want to tell people how they can find you. They're going to find your book on Amazon. I went and looked this morning. It's easy enough to find. How else can they find you? Can you give them a couple of ways? Yeah,
so you can find me at CarlosGill83 on Twitter as well as on Instagram. I'm not hard to find. You can look me up on LinkedIn. My dad and I share the same name. So if you see two Carlos Gills, look for the one that's a few years younger. And for anyone else out there, you know, that's watching this, that, you know, is going through some tough times right now, you're thinking of how to pivot, you don't know how, and you know, you just want to bounce some ideas off of me, just reach out. You know, my DMs are always open.
Awesome. All right. Let me tell everybody what we've got coming up this week. We actually have 2 more guests this week because I wanted to bring a special guest on Friday, somebody who I personally love. But Wednesday, we have Tasha Smith. She's going to talk about joy as a business strategy. I don't even know what that means, but I already love it. Joy is a business strategy. I think that's great. And Friday, we have Kat Harvey. She's going to talk about copywriting and content marketing. Kat is my copywriter. She does a lot of the work that we do at ASMM, but specifically she helps with website audits because too many times, as a matter of fact, have somebody look at your website. Chances are if they don't know you and they don't know what you do and they read your website, they won't know what you do still because most people don't have the right copy on their websites. This is a huge thing for me. It's something I talk about a lot. I want to remind everybody to please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'd really appreciate that because my kids are going to think I'm a nerd until I hit 1,000. That's just simply the way it is, and I don't want them to think that. And if you need help with your digital marketing, we're here, asmmdigital.com. So I want to go back. Carlos, I was thrilled. I've told people, I'm like, I have Carlos Gill coming on the show, and everybody's like, oh wow, like everybody's really excited about that. So it was.
They actually knew who I was.
In my marketing world, yes, they know who you are. In my story, isn't that the case? Right? I used to.
That's always the case.
That's it. I used to think that about. You said earlier that people know you on Twitter, right? But in your own neighborhood, you don't know that they know you. I had that that blog. Everybody knew who Ann from Ann's Running Commentary was, but in my own hometown, nobody knew who I was. So it is funny the circles we run in. So I do appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Ann.
All right, hold on one second. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Bye-bye.